Let's go back to one of our top stories for today pertaining the torching of trucks in the transport sector. We're now joined by Gavin Kelly, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Road Freight Association, and he joins us via our Zoom link. Gavin, thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News. Of course, we've seen the reports coming out from the weekends, trucks being torched in Mpumalanga, and as well as those trucks being torched in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's start off here. What do you make of these attacks in the trucking industry, especially now, particularly when we mark the anniversary of those July unrests?
I've been asked that question a couple of times this evening, and good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. Is this something about the July 21 protests? Is it a commemoration of some sort, or what could it be? I don't think it is. I think it's coincidence that it happened. Where it's happened points to planning. It points to some sort of forethought in terms of where it was done. So if you look at Van Riemen's Pass, where the trucks were attacked, there were objects put across the road. It's a part of the road where the trucks move a lot slower. They are, by the sheer nature of moving a lot slower, and through those turns and those steep ascents and descents, you'll find a lot more trucks together, so they are condensed. It's easy to target them. And then, of course, the drivers were pulled out of the trucks, and thank goodness nobody was hurt, nobody was killed. So for that, we are very grateful, both as a sector and the country. And then the trucks were summarily torched. They were shot at and summarily torched. So this wasn't about looting for food. It wasn't about any sort of criminal activity in terms of after sales of goods. This was a message. And the question really is, what is the message? Is it linked to the previous issues around foreign drivers? And if it is, then why is this happening? We've seen something very similar in Mpumalanga, and unfortunately, it's also happened up in Limpopo, where another 3 trucks were attacked. And once again, specific places on the routes where trucks are congested or have to slow down, where there's very, very little chance of support in terms of security forces getting there quite quickly, and it has to be coordinated. So we have to ask ourselves the question, having listened to the earlier clip about economic sabotage, is there something else behind this?
And, that's the question on most South Africans' minds at the moment, because what you are saying is that these have been carefully coordinated attacks, because you are saying that you find these attacks on the slower routes where there's no police visibility. So as the trucking freight industry, what sort of intervention do you want here? Because, we've seen these attacks. We've seen them in Mpumalanga. We've seen them in KZN as well. What sort of intervention do you want to see from the police?
Well, we have to look at what the outcome is going to be. What effect is it going to have both on our domestic markets, our domestic economy? So there are businesses who are going to be heavily hit. There are businesses who could close. We've seen that happen before in those Tugela truck burnings a couple of years ago, which a lot of us seem to have forgotten about. Businesses closed, unemployment grew, and of course there were support businesses that closed. But more importantly, there are countries around us who are deciding to no longer use our ports. Now the N3, the road that goes through Van Riemen, is the busiest corridor in South Africa. There are on average about 7,000 trucks that move north and south on that road. Okay, not all going to Gauteng or north, not all going to the port, but it is an easy target. And if we're allowing something like that, a key strategic route in our country, to be easily targeted, easily attacked, and it seems to be with impunity. We haven't seen any major cases around those who killed drivers or maimed drivers, injured drivers over the last 5 years, those who've called for this sort of action to be dealt with. So we need the South African police services and our justice system to take harsh measures. And you remember the previous Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, had said that these people must be dealt with, otherwise they will destroy the fabric of our economy, they will destroy our roots, and eventually destroy the country.
One would also ask, you mention the important highway which is being used, and of course the N3, and the ports that link other provinces in this country. When it comes to the impact it has on businesses, can you just tell us more about that, and of course the economy as a whole?
Yeah, sure. So what happened, if we look at what happened at Van Rieenen, there were 6 trucks burnt there. And the value of a truck is the first piece of economic impact. And the trucks can be anywhere between 3 to 10 million, depending on what the truck is, what the cargo is it is carrying, the type of equipment. So if we took an average of about 7 million rand in terms of what happened at Van Rieenen, so very quickly we go between 18 to about 60 million rand, depending on, as I say, if it's between 3 or 10 million rand for the truck. That's just the asset. The fire itself would have destroyed the goods, and there is the owner of the goods, and we don't know what goods they all were, we're still finding that out. The owner of the goods who was selling those goods hoping to make a business revenue. There's the damage to the road. There's, of course, the damage to the driver. The driver will have suffered tremendous emotional and psychological damage. I would not like to have been a driver at that scene where guns are pointed at me and I'm told to get lost, to go away. Can you imagine those drivers don't really feel safe anymore? I would think they wouldn't want to drive. So you have this continuing expanding ring. Then we have businesses who are going to say, well, that's it. I'm no longer going to trade with South Africa or through South Africa. We already have companies in the world who are pouring billions of dollars into Beira, to Lobito, to various ports around us to start moving goods there. Copper, 70% of the copper is moved away from South Africa. It's going to Beira, it's going to Lobito, it's going to Walvis Bay, it's going to Maputo. So you're going to find that businesses is going to start to shrink. All those support businesses that support road freight transport are going to shrink. There's going to be no more business for them. There's going to be loss of revenue. There's going to be further unemployment.
And perhaps, Gavin, if you can just give us a bit of an insight in terms of the state of, these truck drivers who have been involved in these attacks. What support are they being given? Because, this is something quite traumatic that many of them encounter while they're at work.
Well, obviously, I haven't spoken to each and every one of those drivers, so I don't know their state of mind. I can very well imagine that they're going to have huge trauma issues. I'm sure some of them will have what is known in America as post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm sure having these sort of things happen to you, and as I say, we are so very lucky no one was injured or killed, but there will be counseling service for them. In our sector of the industry, we have wellness programs, so they'll be looked after in terms of that as best possible. But this is something that stays with you, and obviously you're going to make a decision whether you want to continue in this sort of job or not. And we do have a shortage of good skilled drivers in the country. That's not a secret. And you don't want to lose drivers who have got excellent records, excellent experience to something like this. It's going to have a traumatic effect on those drivers.
And what is the way forward here so that, next year, this time, we're not having this conversation again? Surely all these sectors need to come together to find long-standing solutions to this problem.
Well, hopefully we're not going to have this discussion tomorrow or next week. I definitely don't want to wait until next year. So there were a number of task teams that got together over the last couple of years, and more recently, about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, the previous Minister of Transport, the Minister of Labour and Employment, the Minister of Police, Minister of Home Affairs got together and a task team was formed, and out of that task team came an 11-point implementation plan. Now, those 11 points, some of them are in process, and unfortunately, some of them haven't moved very far at all. We need to get those points which pointed to, excuse the pun, or highlighted the causes of, if this is all about foreign drivers, and as I said, we don't really know what these attacks are, let's make the speculation that it is this, that we then get all of those points going and that we address those issues that were raised. So, for example, employers who employ illegal foreigners must then be dealt with. All employers need to be inspected. We need to make sure that the playing fields are level for all of those who are employed in this sector, never mind the other sectors.